Moving on to next question. A third Gravida, Para 2, Abortion 0 and Live 2 patient comes with the 35 weeks of period of gestation. Had complaint of decreased fetal movement since past 2 days. On her examination, fetal heart sound could not be noted. Her X-ray standing abdomen was performed and Robert's sign was noted. Which of the following is correct about Robert's sign? Okay. So to proceed with this question, what we need to do is that first the complaint has decreased fetal movement. Okay. Now what are the causes of decreased fetal movement? It would be IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction. Then the other would be oligohydramnios, intrauterine fetal demise, or it could be other complications of IUGR, causative factors of IUGR such as preeclampsia, anemia, cardiac disease, etc. Or polyhydramnios, where the liquor is so much increased that the patient might not be able to perceive the fetus is moving. Okay, so these are the causes. Now, since past 2 days, she is not having fetal movement. The next is on examination, her FHS could not be noted. Okay, now if you go for examining and you auscultate the patient's fetal heart sound, then you will be noting the FHS in all these conditions except the intrauterine fetal demise. Okay, so this is a case of intrauterine fetal demise. So now, if you consider in the present times, what is the management? So first investigation you would like to go for is the ultrasound. What you do is you just look at the fetal heart rate, and immediately you will be finding that there is no fetal cardiac activity, and you can label it as intrauterine fetal demise. If there is if the fetus has been dead inside the mother's womb for more than 7 days, what you also get is the Spalding sign. Okay, here there is maceration of the as well as liquefaction of the brain matter takes place, which leads to what? Which leads to the overlapping of the fetal skull bone over one another. Okay, so this is a liquefied brain matter and the skull bone would overlap each other. So that is typically seen on the ultrasound. This particular thing is also seen on X-ray. But what happens is in older times or in the peripheral setup, if ultrasound machine is not available, you can also find the same thing, or you can also diagnose the same thing with the help of X-ray. So there are certain changes which take place in the X-ray on if the fetus has already been dead. So the first would be the first change is noted in 12 hours. If more than 12 hours, the second change is noted more than 7 days. And if the third change would be noted at 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. So first change is more than 12 hours is the Roberts sign. What happens is that in the atrium as well as ventricles as well as the large vessels of the fetus like aorta and inferior vena cava, there is filling of the gas which takes place, and it is noted as the gaseous shadow on the X-ray. Okay, so gaseous shadow on X-ray. Now, if more than 7 days have passed, as I mentioned earlier, what happens is that there is the maceration of the as well as liquefaction of the brain matter, and ultimately leads to the overlapping of the fetal skull bone over one another. So this is called as Spalding sign on X-ray, which is seen after more than 7 days. Okay, at or more than 7 days. Now, if 3 to 4 weeks have already passed, what happens is that the fetal spine undergoes flexion, hyperflexion, okay, and forms like a ball, which is called as the ball sign. Note it down. This is very important. Okay. Also, the fetal ribs are attached to these vertebral processes. So what happens is, along with the curvature, the ribs also start to come near each other, leading to the crowding of the ribs. Okay. So coming back to the question on appearance of gas shadow, yes, Roberts sign is the appearance of gas shadow, hyperflexion of the spine, that is called as ball sign, and the irregular overlapping of the cranial bones, that is called as the Spalding sign, crowding of the ribs, that is not called as the Roberts sign. These are the images. So see, as you can see, the ball sign, that is the sudden, that is excessive hyperflexion of the vertebra. Then this is an image showing the Spalding sign on ultrasound. Okay, there is typical overlapping of the bone. More than 7 days have passed. Okay, now we move on to the next question. A second gravida female had normal labor. The next step to be done was active stage of management of third stage of labor, which is not correct about active management of the third stage of labor. So, if we talk about the following delivery, what happens is that these are the uterine muscles which are in the crisscross pattern. Okay, and there are vessels which are passing through it. Okay, so what happens is these are the vessels and these are the uterine muscles in the crisscross pattern. So whenever there is this following the delivery of the placenta, the uterus goes into enormous contraction such that, and as well as retraction such that these vessels would be obliterated in between the uterine musculature. Okay, so this is called as the living ligature. Now, if the uterus fails to contract and obliterate these vessels, it leads to enormous bleeding and catastrophic conditions like the postpartum hemorrhage. In order to prevent this, what we do is, what we practice in general is the active management of third stage of labor. So, following the delivery of the fetus, we give 10 units of IM oxytocin. Okay, so 10 units of IM. It is not to be given IV. Okay, never it is to be given IV bolus because it is going to cause sudden hypotension. So avoid giving intravenous oxytocin. Give IM oxytocin. Okay, then next is along with that. So giving oxytocin, it would cause the uterine contraction. And simultaneously, what you need to do is the controlled cord traction by modified Brandt-Entreu method. Do not pull. Okay, so you have to gently give traction to the cord. Here, this is the cord. You have to give just gentle traction as shown in this figure. Gentle downward and backward traction, and you have to give downward and upward push over the uterine fundus. Okay, so fundus is to be pushed posteriorly and backwards, and this is to be gently, the force needs to be given gently downward and backward direction. Okay, so automatically the as the uterus is going to contract, the surface area of the placenta and the uterus, there is a marked difference in the surface area, and the placenta will be separated. So this is going to decrease, the surface area of placenta is going to be more, and eventually it gets separated and is expelled. Okay, so this ensures that the postpartum hemorrhage does not take place. So if we go at the options, first option is the parenteral oxytocin within 1 minute of delivery of the baby. That is correct. Okay, control cord traction, yes, that is done in case of the active management of third stage of labor. Okay, spontaneous expulsion of the placenta with the aid of gravity. Okay, so this thing particularly is called as the expectant management. Okay, which is not done in general practice. Now, since they have asked which is not done, so this would be the correct answer. Okay. And the last option is the clamp, divided, and ligate and cord. That is also done. At the end, once the placenta is delivered, we clamp the cord, divide, and ligate the cord. Okay. So the option, since they have asked what is not done in the active management of third stage of labor, option C is not done, and this makes it as the correct answer for the question. Moving on to the 8th question, a Gravida 2 Para 1 A0 and L1 patient was delivered. Following delivery of the fetus and the placenta, there was bleeding per vagina. On examination, her vitals were pulse was 110 per minute and BP was 100 by 70 mmHg. Uterus was atonic, cervical exploration was done and no tears were found. Which of the following is not used in the management of this patient? Okay, so the catch here is that she is actually having tachycardia, number one. The second thing is that the uterus is atonic. As they have mentioned, uterus is atonic and there was bleeding. So, which makes it as a case of atonic postpartum hemorrhage. Okay. Also, there is this is not the case of traumatic postpartum hemorrhage because the cervical exploration was done and there was no tear found. Okay, so you have to proceed with the further management of the atonic PPH. Now, if such patient comes in face in the labor room, what you have to do is just call for help, number one. Second thing is you need to insert 2 large bore 14 gauge IV needle, IV cannula. And thirdly, you need to resuscitate the patient, okay? Arrange blood and start IV fluid like ringalectin, okay? Also that, since the patient is having atonic uterus, you need to give, first is the medical management with uterotonics. Okay, so here, first is we have methergin, which is given in 0.2 milligrams dose. Second is oxytocin. We give it as an infusion. Do not give as IV bolus. Never ever give as IV bolus. Okay. Third thing which I would like to use is the misoprostol. PGE1 in the dose of 800 micrograms, which is given per rectally. Okay. And lastly, we have is the carboprost, which is PGF2 alpha. Okay. This is given in the dose of 250 micrograms IM, and it can also be repeated at least about 8 times in the total of 8 doses. Okay. So this can be given in the total of 8 doses at an interval of 15 minutes. If this medical management does not appear to control the bleeding, then you need to proceed with the other surgical management. Okay, so if we go with the options, option A is methergin, option B is misoprostol, option C is ritodrin, and option D is 15-methyl PGF2 alpha. So option A, option B, and option D, all these three are used in the case of the management of the postpartum hemorrhage. The option C, which is ritodrin, which is ritodrin, which is actually a uterine muscle relaxant. It acts on the beta-2 agonist receptors, and it is going to cause decrease in the calcium level inside the muscles, and ultimately it is going to cause the uterine muscle relaxation. So, since they have asked which of the following is not used in case of management of the patient in case of postpartum hemorrhage, C would be the correct answer. 9th question. A 28-year-old female, Gravida 2 Para 1 A0L1 lady presents to the labor room with the complaint of labor pains at 34 weeks of gestation for past 6 hours. On examination, she looks tired, anxious, and the heart rate is 110 per minute with blood pressure of 140 by 90. Her pelvic examination shows periodic uterine contraction with a fetal heart of 80 per minute, and CTG was done, which shows the fetal heart rate to be persistently less than 100 per minute. Which of the following is not to be done in this case? Okay, so as clearly mentioned, this is a case of the preterm labor. Okay, so preterm labor, since she is having periodic uterine contraction. So this is the period of gestation is less than 34 weeks, and she is having periodic uterine contraction. So this makes it preterm labor. The second associated with this is the fetal distress. Okay, so that is she's having 80 beats per minute, and her CTG was also abnormal. So what you do is, in the case of fetal distress, is that you start IV drip to the patient, give her left oxygen, and give her left lateral position. Okay, these are the three things which you do to the patient. Also, since the patient is in the preterm, that is less than 34 weeks of gestation, the lungs, fetal lungs, would not be enough mature. For fetal maturity, what we give is the beta-methazone or dexamethasone. These two are the steroids which cause the fetal lung maturation. After giving this, since it is fetal distress, if the fetal heart rate does not improve, then we have to proceed with the cesarean delivery. Okay, so if we look at the options, first is give betamethasone to the mother. Yes, that is correct. Second option is the left lateral position. Again, as I mentioned, left lateral position, that is also correct. Tocolysis with atosiban. So atosiban is the oxytocin receptor antagonist, which is going to cause uterine muscle relaxation, and it is used for the prevention of the preterm labor. But since she is in established labor and she is having fetal distress, we do not have to use this. And the last option is requisition of the blood with plan of urgent LSCS. Okay, since as I mentioned, LSCS is to be done, we always need to keep blood ready, cross-matched blood ready. So option D is correct. So according to the options, this is a wrong option. Okay, we proceed with the next question. 10th, that is, a primary gravida patient who is 30-year-old female has developed leakage per vagina for past 24 hours at 32 weeks of gestation. She does not have any complaint of labor pain. Which of the following complications she can develop in the mother? So first is, this is a case of, again, a preterm. 32 weeks is the preterm. It is also mentioned that she does not have any labor pain, so she is in the pre-labor. And there is leakage per vagina. That is, the leakage occurs because of the rupture of membrane. Okay, so which makes it PPROM, that is preterm, pre-labor rupture of membrane. Now, if we talk about the complications of this patient, in any case of PPROM, because of the labor, what happens is that because of the rupture of membrane, what happens is there is development of the preterm labor. The second complication which can occur is that the liquor would be decreased, leading to the oligohydramnios, okay, which hinders with the development of the fetal lungs, and it causes skeletal deformities. Okay, so this in the fetus, what we get is the fetal respiratory distress. Okay, mentioned in the fetal respiratory distress. Also, very important aspect is that the uterus gets exposure to all the bacteria which are present inside the vaginal cavity, because the membranes have ruptured. Okay, so membranes have ruptured, so the pathogen can directly enter inside the uterine cavity and the placenta, and it can cause the inflammation of placenta plus membranes. This is called as the chorioamnionitis. Okay, patient presents with severe fever, and the treatment of this is the IV antibiotics. Plus, you have to urgent delivery. Okay. So coming back to the options we are given, which is the complication which is developing in this case is the amniotic fluid embolism. That is not seen, it is seen post delivery. Complete abortion, no, it is a preterm bacha, so it is not an abortion. Option A is wrong, option B is wrong, option C chorioamnionitis, yes, it can be seen, so this is correct. Option C respiratory distress syndrome, now this is seen in the case of fetus, but in the they have asked about mother, so this is also wrong option. So we are left with option C, which is the correct answer. Now, which of the following investigating parameter is wrong about the iron status in the pregnant female? So, very important point which we note about the iron status of pregnant female is that the increase in the requirement takes place in case of the pregnant female. Okay, because the uterine muscles also are undergoing development, as well as the growing fetus also needs the iron. Second thing is that the hemodilution takes place. So every pregnant female, she is going to develop physiological anemia of pregnancy. Okay. Now, very important point you need to understand is that iron is stored in the form of ferritin, transferred in the form of transferrin. Okay. Because of the increased requirement, what happens is that the serum iron levels are also going to be low. The iron which is present already, that is reduced. So that would be utilized from the storage form. So storage form, which is ferritin, that is also going to decrease. Okay. And the transferring form, that is the transferrin, that is also going to be the percentage of the iron which it can be saturated with, that is also going to be decreased. So all these three parameters are decreased. The only parameter which is increased is the total iron binding capacity, which means the capacity of binding with the iron. If you are giving it something, it has an enormous capacity that it can inculcate more amount of iron. That is going to be increased, but the serum iron, serum ferritin, and the transferrin saturation, all these three parameters are going to decrease. So the correct option would be low total iron binding capacity. This is wrong option. So they have asked what is wrong about the iron status. So option B is the correct answer. Moving on to the 12th question, a patient of Gravida 2 para 1 A0L1 comes to emergency at 37 weeks of gestation with the complaint of bleeding per vaginum. Her past visit report was suggestive of placenta previa. Which of the following would not be found in her? So, since she has bleeding per vaginum, her first differential diagnosis would be placenta previa and placental abruption. Also, there is one report which is suggesting that she had placenta previa in past. Okay. So we need to, her findings should be differentiated from that of the placental abruption. So in case of the placenta previa and placental abruption, what happens is in the placenta previa, the placenta occupies the lower pole of the uterus, and in later months, because of the because of the formation of the lower uterine segment, the placenta is inevitably separated and it leads to the bleeding. Whereas what happens is in the case of the placental abruption, the placenta is normally situated. Okay, placenta is normally situated, but there is premature separation. Okay, so this leads to the bleeding. Since this is at a wrong time and a premature separation takes place, the placenta is the sole blood supply to the fetus. So this is decreasing, as a result of which the fetus is compromised. The blood which was supposed to be going to the fetus, it was not getting that. Ultimately, it leads to the fetal demise. Okay. Also, sometimes what happens is that the blood in the placental abruption gets collected behind the uterus, and it leads to the increase in the uterine height. So because of which the uterine height would be out of proportion to that of the period of gestation. These all things are not noted in the placenta previa. On the contrary, what we find in placenta previa is that the placenta is occupying the lower pole of the uterus, because of which the fetal head would not be able to engage inside the pelvis. So head is always high and floating. Okay. So if we read the options, so the height of the uterus is disproportionate to gestational age. No, that is seen in case of abruption. So that is a wrong answer. So now they have asked which of the following findings would not be found in the case of this patient. So height of the uterus is disproportionate to gestational age. This is seen in the case of placental abruption, but the case is placenta previa. Hence, this is the correct answer. Uterus is soft and relaxed. Yes, in case of placenta previa, it is soft and relaxed, whereas in case of placental abruption, uterus is tonically contracted. Head is high floating. Again, that is seen in the case of placenta previa, and the fetal heart rate is present. Yes, that is also noted in placenta previa.